The door opened with its familiar click, yet the woman who walked inside felt like a complete stranger wearing a coat I recognized. Audrey had been away for 10 days on what she described as a self-discovery retreat in the mountains. I never asked who she had been discovering because deep down, I already knew the answer. She didn't greet me, and I didn't welcome her home. We stood inside a silence so heavy that it revealed far more than any confession ever could. She walked past the kitchen island without looking at me, pretending to be interested in a pile of mail that clearly meant nothing. Every movement felt practiced, like an actor trying to perform a role they no longer remembered. I noticed the way she gripped her phone. Her fingers held it tightly, almost protectively, as if it were a shield keeping her secrets safely hidden from me. Surprisingly, I wasn't angry. Anger clouds judgment. Instead, I felt like a mechanic examining a cracked engine block. It wasn't a tragedy to mourn. It was simply a problem that required a solution. I calmly told her we were going out for dinner. It wasn't a request. It was a scheduled plan. The restaurant was dimly lit, and the background noise was just loud enough to keep private conversations hidden. I deliberately chose a table with my back against the wall. Audrey sat across from me, glancing at her phone every time its screen lit up. She barely opened the menu. I ordered a glass of water and quietly observed her. Her posture was stiff, the unmistakable posture of someone expecting confrontation. I chose not to give her one. Instead, I casually asked how her trip had been. She offered a rehearsed answer about finding clarity and needing space. I allowed the silence to linger for exactly 5 seconds before speaking again. "You look different," I said. She forced a laugh, but it sounded empty. Then she finally delivered the sentence she had probably rehearsed during the drive home. She told me she'd been doing a lot of thinking. She said she no longer wanted to stay married. Then she added that she hoped we could still be friends. In situations like this, the word friends is rarely innocent. It's often a carefully chosen way to keep the emotional and financial comforts of a relationship while walking away from the responsibilities that come with loyalty. I didn't flinch. I didn't ask why. I simply met her eyes and told her that I agreed. The surprise on her face told me everything. She had expected tears. She had expected questions. She had expected me to beg or demand answers about the man she had been seeing. Instead, by agreeing without hesitation, I took away every bit of leverage she thought she had. I told her that if friendship was truly what she wanted, then we would begin living that way immediately. No more expectations, no more shared responsibilities, no more pretending. A look of relief crossed her face, and that became her second mistake. She believed she had won. What she didn't realize was that I was already several moves ahead. During the next 2 weeks, I became completely emotionally detached. I stopped acting like a husband and quietly became a ghost inside my own home. I watched her change from careful to careless. People stop covering their tracks the moment they believe no one is paying attention. That was when I started documenting everything, not out of revenge, but because I needed solid legal protection. I met with a forensic accountant and an elite divorce attorney named Marcus. Marcus wasn't interested in emotions. His world revolved around evidence, assets, and strategy. His advice was simple: keep the peace until everything was in place. I followed every instruction exactly as he gave it. I quietly transferred small amounts of money into protected private accounts. I collected records of everything she had spent during her so-called retreat. I even hired a private investigator to verify the identity of the man she had been seeing. His name meant nothing to my heart, but it meant everything to my legal case. Every report from the investigator became another file. Every photograph of Audrey with Edward was simply another document waiting to be organized. Meanwhile, Audrey grew increasingly confident. She stayed out later and later, returning home carrying the scent of expensive cologne mixed with cheap excuses. She mistook my silence for weakness. She assumed I was emotionally broken. She couldn't have been more wrong. I wasn't breaking. I was preparing. I was waiting until my legal position became impossible to challenge. I watched her get dressed for dates in our shared bedroom, carefully applying perfume for another man. Instead of anger, I felt only detached curiosity at how completely she had abandoned any sense of respect. One evening, she casually mentioned she would be home late and told me not to wait for her. I simply nodded and said I had work to finish, and I did. My work was completing the divorce filing. Every text message, every hotel receipt, every photograph had already been organized into both digital and printed files. I had secured the house as a premarital asset and protected every important investment I owned. Now only one final step remained. I invited her to dinner at home one last time. I told her we needed to discuss the practical details of our new friendship. She arrived exactly at 7, glowing with the confidence of someone who believed they had escaped a disaster without suffering any consequences. I cooked a simple dinner. Then I waited until she took her very first bite. Without saying a single word, I placed a large manila envelope in front of her. Silence filled the room as she opened it. Within seconds, confidence turned into confusion, and confusion quickly became absolute terror. She saw the photographs. She saw the financial records. She saw every date, every receipt, every piece of evidence. She opened her mouth to deny everything, but I calmly raised one hand. "Excuses," I said quietly, "are only useful to people who still have something left to lose." Then I explained that the friendship she had asked for had officially begun. I was no longer her husband, her protector, her provider, or the person she could lean on. I was simply the man bringing our legal contract to an end. She started crying, but those tears weren't for the marriage we had lost. They were for the security she had just realized was gone. In that moment, she understood that asking for a fresh start had instead triggered a complete ending. I calmly informed her that she had 48 hours to move out. A moving company had already been arranged to help with the process. My voice never changed. There was no anger, no negotiation. She tried reminding me of all the years we had spent together. I reminded her just as calmly that those were the same years she had devalued the moment she chose dishonesty over loyalty. I stood up, left the envelope on the table, and walked into my study. I never looked back. I didn't need closure from her. Preparation and precision had already given me all the closure I needed. 60 days later, the divorce was finalized. She attempted to challenge the settlement, but the evidence was overwhelming. She left the marriage with exactly what she had brought into it, and nothing more. I sold the house and moved somewhere untouched by memories of our life together. People often ask how I managed to stay so calm. Some call it cold. I call it survival. When the foundation of your life begins to collapse, you don't waste time patching cracks while the roof is still falling. You step away, let the broken structure come down, and begin building something stronger on solid ground. Because silence isn't the absence of sound. Sometimes silence is the greatest expression of strength.